For our next panel, Christine Coe is an award-winning blogger, author, podcaster, designer, and creative director. She is wicked smart. I had to put a Boston pun in there. And is a former music and brain neuroscientist turned multimedia creative. You may also be very familiar with Christine from the Amaze Live panels that she hosts on her Facebook channel, Amaze Parents. Welcome, Christine.
Hi, how are you, Shazmin?
Now it's a party, Christine.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. I will say that Nora is a bit of a tough act to follow, but I'm gonna.
That's how we feel, Christine.
I'm just gonna try. What else can we do? We just persist. So I want to just start actually by just saying, so hello, I'm Christine, and as Shazmin said, I'm hanging out on Facebook all the time at Amaze Parents. I hope you guys join us over there. We have a lot of educators there. And our Facebook Live, I should say, I shouldn't be humble anymore. We're award winning. We won recently Live Stream of the Year, so got to put that out there. It's really exciting. But I do want to say, just before we even get into it, thank you all, because educators are doing the hardest job right now. And so I bow down to you all. So you're not only doing all the things that you need to do, but you're here showing up for professional development and community. And this is what makes the world go round. This is really awesome. So thank you guys for being here. I am delighted today because from my pandemic office here, am joined by some amazing educators. I mentioned Nora already being a tough act to follow, and honestly, I kind of want to be her in my next life, like when I come back as a sex ed educator. But meanwhile, I'm really delighted to talk to a panel with a few educators. So I was hoping that people could introduce themselves. I see Vanessa, do you want to start? Oh, I'm not hearing Vanessa, so I don't know if other people are struggling with that. There you go.
Okay, sorry, wrong mute button. I just got these new headphones, so sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Peña Torre. My pronouns are she and her, and I work at Portland Public Schools as the program manager for K-5 health education. And I'm just really excited to be here today to share my experiences using Amaze videos. A few different ways. One primary way has been to support culturally specific sexuality education programming with the Latina or Latinx middle school and high school youth and parents in the Portland metro area. And another way I've been able to utilize these Amaze videos have been to support new educator trainees for new sexuality educators and facilitators in community-based organizations, as well as our K-5 health teachers who are taking the charge of teaching sexuality education virtually this year.
Wonderful. Justine, I think I see you in the corner there.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be a part of this panel. I'll give a little context as to how I even got into this career, ending with what I am doing now as a Zoom school sex educator. I started actually as a middle school math teacher, teaching 7th and 8th grade math at a public school in Abstinence-only Texas. And in my class of 24 students, 4 of them were already pregnant and 2 of them were currently parents. And this really started my journey into sex education and figuring out ways to bring in sexuality topics into my math classroom with decimal points and bar graphs and statistics and things like that. And what really pushed me to change what was happening in that particular school was one student who was basically absent 1 week out of every month because nobody told her that having a period wasn't an illness and there wasn't any type of even biology taught at this school. And so 2 master's degrees later, focusing on education and public health, I founded the health and wellness program at the school that I currently teach at in New York City. And we have a K through 12 comprehensive sex positive health program with, of course, I'm partial to the sexuality bit, so that part is totally being crushed and is awesome. But as a result of what I've built in the 9 years at this school, I'm working in other schools around the country, helping them to build similar or to enhance their health programs around mental health, nutrition, sexuality, and also building community. So happy to be here and share some of how I've used Amaze, which has been integral to my career.
That's amazing. Thank you. And Rose, hello.
Hey, Christine. And hey, everybody. My name is Rose Barclow, and I use she, her pronouns. And I am the sex ed supervisor for Denver Public Schools. And just kind of how that position even came to be is Denver Public Schools really, I think, was progressive in saying that rather than making somebody's job, 10% of their job is to focus on comprehensive sex ed, they really said we need someone who can work on this full time to support our 200 plus schools in integrating comprehensive sex ed into their curriculum and programs. And so here in Denver, we work with about 210 schools and about 90,000 students.
Wow. Okay. Well, so, and just one little bit of housekeeping I realized. So first, thank you guys for all being here. I'm just really, really excited about this conversation today. And I just wanted to encourage people that if you have questions for our amazing panelists, go ahead and drop them in the chat or the Q&A, and the magical wizards who are working behind the scenes will wing those to me towards the end, and I'll keep an eye on the time and make sure we can get to some of those questions. So I'm just going to throw out a general question to our panelists, and I'm curious about, obviously you're working with Amaze, but I'd love to hear how and why you've used Amaze. And actually, I'm curious about what your favorite video might be, if you're willing to be put on the spot.
All right, I'll go. My favorite video is how the boner grows.
It was the first one.
It wasn't really. Oh my gosh. I love that video. I will admit, though, I do not use it because I cannot keep a straight face when that plays. It's totally accurate and totally wonderful, but I just don't think that my 6th grade students appreciate it in the way that I do. And so I've picked some of the other videos to talk about erections and nocturnal emissions and things like that. But I love that video the most, and I just love the music video vibe to it. It really just makes it so accessible. And so, yeah, that's my favorite one. The one that I do use a lot and really appreciate that the students do as well is the one on virginity and the first kiss, showing affection. I find it to be so accessible, and also in terms of interest, students have so many questions about the actual behaviors and how to partake in the behaviors and how to, address it in a way that's consensual. So I feel like that first affection one is just so practical because they want to know like the literal nuts and bolts of like, but how do I make this thing actually happen? I now know all these theories and I know all of these, the language and the vocabulary, but how do I like put this physical thing into action? So I really love that one. And the virginity one, I show it with K through 90-year-olds because it just sets a really good foundation for looking at the patriarchal structures that have really influenced the way we look at sexuality.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned 90-year-olds, K through 90-year-olds, because no joke, I said this on a Facebook Live recently, but I recently had my first sex ed conversation with my mother, and she's 84, and this happened about 3 weeks ago. So it is never too late to learn. Okay, Vanessa, how about you?
Yes, the one for me would be expressing myself my way. That's been my favorite, especially working with the middle school students, 7th and 8th grade. It's a very relatable video that students get, not only in regards to gender identity, but also the expression piece. We've been able to get in really good, enriching conversations, even about like the social emotional component about what it means to be confident in your identity and be able to express your identity. And so that also has been able to bring about bullying and advocacy. And so it's been a really good foundational video that's kind of accepted and easy to connect with a lot of students, regardless of the age. I mean, I've also used it with middle school students as well, 9th and 10th graders, and they really have a lot to say about it. But I really feel like in regards to prevention, I'm very prevention oriented. Like the earlier we can get it in with them, the better. When I showed it, I even shared it with our teachers, and they've mentioned about maybe 5th grade they could even use it with the 5th grade students. We'll see how this year goes because of COVID. We weren't able to do sex ed last year, but we're definitely looking at it. And yeah, that's that. I would have to say, out of all the great videos there are with youth, it would be that one.
And how about you, Rose?
Yeah, I think the video I'm a little obsessed with right now is porn, fact or fiction, because we are just, with the increase of students in front of computers, we have had lots of interest from teachers and caregivers on how do we have conversations around porn, and navigating how do I, have a lesson in our public schools that can support, conversations around porn.
Yeah, that's great. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out, and I'm sure my colleagues can toss this in the chat, but there are other porn resources on the Amaze site, because for sure that has been a video of hot interest with COVID. So Vanessa, I just want to loop back to you specifically, because when we had communicated a bit in advance of this conversation, I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you're using Amaze videos for culturally specific programming.
Yeah, definitely. So prior to my work at Portland Public Schools, I used to work for a culturally specific organization called Latino Network. And I worked there for about 5 years. And the work we did there was through a collaborative grant project where we were looking at how to provide culturally specific sex ed for our 7th through 12th graders. And part of that work really entailed a collaborative effort with bringing about different experts who could really look at the curriculum and make those adaptations so we could not just be responsive to where our students are, but also really make those inclusive changes. So LGBTQ inclusivity, cultural identity, inclusivity regarding their ethnic and racial makeup as a Latino, but Latino doesn't represent everybody. So like, are they from Central America? Are they from South America? Like really getting to the true authenticity of how they express their identities. And these videos, when it comes to engaging youth, and I think also adults, you can talk for 15 to 20 minutes and then our attention goes elsewhere, right? And so with youth, we really wanted to increase the engagement by looking at videos. And the Amaze videos were one of the ways that we found that we were able to really sustain their engagement, partly also because we really wanted to make sure the videos that we used in our curricula represented our youth. And the way Amaze has designed their videos, there's cultural diversity in the characters. And that really helps create that rich fabric that this is an experience that all identities are having actually an opportunity of being alive to be able to experience. And so how can we experience this in a really affirming way? And so wherever we could, we would embed an Amaze video so long as it complemented the content for the day. And so that's kind of really the lens that we looked at. We also worked with other culturally specific organizations to embed other videos that weren't specifically Amaze videos, but I would say it was truly a countywide culturally specific CBO organization collective to come about to identify which of videos would be ideal to really reach our youth.
Yeah, that's amazing. Rose and Justine, I'm curious if either of you, and only if you want to drop in a comment here, if you have had experience sort of tailoring the use of Amaze to sort of specific, groups or ages. I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, I can share real quick. I think I could speak to specifically how we've used Amaze with parents and caregivers. And so one thing that we do is we have a parent handbook that we've created, and we ask all schools before they teach sex education to send out the parent handbook, because we really want to support parents and caregivers having these conversations at home along with what's happening at school. And in that parent handbook, we really want to give parents the opportunity to engage with the content in different ways. So we use Amaze videos as a way for them to watch the content. We use some podcasts as they can listen to it, or we use kind of written form. And so we have been able to embed Amaze into all the different content that we send to parents in a parent handbook, which has been a great way and a very approachable way for parents to watch the videos on their own or watch them with their children to kind of begin the conversations at home.
That's wonderful. Yeah, go ahead.
In my workshops with like faculty and staff members that are in schools, whether it's my school or a school that I'm consulting with, like many other adults, my generation above, they have not gotten sex positive, comprehensive sex education. And so after, I'm throwing at them the slides and the text and all of that, they feel very overwhelmed. And then they feel a sense of encouragement that all they have to do is press play on a 4-minute Amaze video, and it sums it up more eloquently than I could do. And they're like, oh, so I'll just play this in class and then I'll have the students unpack it. and they feel a lot better and a lot more encouraged that they can incorporate sex ed topics into, you know, their history classroom or their English classroom in ways that don't require them to, you know, have me in the room. Parents feel similarly too after, you know, I throw out a lot of information and statistics. They feel so relieved that there's a resource like this that is intended for their middle school students or their, you know, maybe elementary students, but know that, oh, I'll just watch this with my kid and we'll have a conversation about it and we'll both be learning it together, because for many of them, it's probably the first time that they're hearing things presented in such an inclusive way.
Christine, if I could add, Justine made a great point, and Rose, I love the sound of your handbook. I might connect with you after this, but when at Latino Network, one of the ways that we also we wanted to engage the parents, and we have the Latino Network has really rigorous parent engagement programming. So we actually had parent sexuality education curricula called Oye, Opciones y Educación, or Options in Education. And we utilized, I really loved when I started seeing the Amaze videos getting translated, because that opened up the door for us to use the Spanish version of the Amaze videos to elevate also the content. Because essentially, as Justine was mentioning, many of us adults, if we receive sexuality education as a younger person, it was not affirming. And if anything, promoted more traumas and triggers. And so for many, it was their first time either receiving sexuality education as an adult, while also trying to have some awareness of how to be a trusted adult with their young person. And so we shared with them videos that were available in Spanish that we're also showing in English to the students, so they had awareness of what students were learning, and also ended each session talking about parent-child connectedness and how could they be available to talk to their young person should the young person be coming home with questions, or how to use, you know, commercials, TV, bonding activities that they're already doing with their kiddos, so they could spark the conversation with their young people. And we always made sure that parents knew the Spanish versions of the Amaze videos that were available. So huge kudos to you all for getting these translated, because in regards to cultural responsiveness, that's also been a huge, huge tool.
That's wonderful to hear. So I'm curious, you know, it sounds like the reactions that you've been receiving from, you know, students, parents, caregivers, this has all sounded positive, and we'll get to like resistance in just a second. But I'm curious for whoever wants to answer, if there was like an aha moment somewhere along the way where you kind of could get somebody who is maybe like a little hesitant, like over to the other side, thinking, okay, yeah, this is great, we should be learning this stuff. I'm always curious about those, you know, little moments where, you know, people get on board with sex ed. It can be challenging.
I'll use the example that Rose gave about the porn fact or fiction video, because this is where that moment you're describing, Christine, has occurred. Parents will want to opt out of the class if they know porn literacy is happening for their 7th grade. And then I share with them, I understand. And if you feel equipped to have these conversations at home, then I hope and trust that you are using a resource like Amaze, like this video. And then once they see it, they're like, oh, so you're not showing porn to my 7th grader. And I'm like, no, because I'd like to keep my job. And so I'm not, but this is the way that we can teach porn literacy well. And they're like, oh, okay, they can stay in the class then. So there was initial pushback because their perception is sex ed is condom on a banana to their 7th grader, or porn literacy, the teacher's gonna show porn in a class. Like, I don't want that to happen. So there's just so much misconception as to what even sex ed looks like. And that's what I love about the visual medium that Amaze is. And I can offer a link to a parent, they press play, it's only 3 minutes of their life, and then they're totally sold after that. Like, oh, I didn't realize sex ed could be like this, because again, they never got it like that too. So pushback initially, and then totally coming the other way because of seeing how accessible it actually is and how good and safe it is for their child.
Yeah, and I would just add real quick, I think the connection between the 3 R's curriculum and Amaze, and how many of the videos are embedded in the instruction and in the lessons, helps me so much when I'm working with schools to try to convince them, because here in Colorado, we don't have a sex ed requirement. So it's a lot of convincing, recommending that schools teach it. And so it really helps me to be able to say, you know, there's both resources via video as well as lesson plans, and tying those two together. And it's a really great kind of opportunity to just say, here's this full package for you. Instead of just kind of a handbook of lessons, it really is this full package, which is great.
I would just,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I would just add that I completely agree with what's been said. I mean, it's similar to what I mentioned previously about how parents, us as adults, parents and guardians, and even aunts and uncles, really anybody involved in the learning and sharing of knowledge for young people, when we were in their age, we probably didn't receive sexuality education, and if we did, it wasn't affirming like what we're really wanting to do now. So it makes sense psychologically how we, as adults, we're going to come into this wanting to protect our kiddos. And so I always try to think about where our adult experiences lie, like historically what were our experiences. So with that, whenever I'm meeting with parents, whether it's parents at PPS in Portland Public Schools or in my prior role in community-based organizations, really trying to be transparent with what we are teaching, the content, doing a walkthrough with them, and if there's any videos, also showing those videos and giving them the resources so they can do their learning as well. And Amaze has been a huge tool in supporting that adult learning process for our teachers. A lot of them have thumbed through a lot of these topics in the English videos, and with our Latino or Latinx parents, they've really enjoyed the Spanish videos as well.
Fantastic. Well, so, and Justine, I loved your example about, just kind of getting over initial trepidation with like just looking at the looking at the material. But let's go a little bit further and talk about any sort of direct resistance, whether it's from school administration or other colleagues. Have you encountered that with, Amaze videos or other materials? And if so, how did you overcome or address it?
I can just say from like a very, a big district perspective, what has really helped is getting the central office district staff on board. Because what has really helped is that teachers and schools feel like if something goes wrong, if there's a parent that gets really angry or a teacher that doesn't quite teach in the best way, that they have somebody to fall back on to have conversations with parents, to have conversations with a principal or whomever. And so really, I think the schools feeling like they have support at a central office and we have their back has really allowed schools to feel like they can kind of play Amaze videos, they can do 3R's curriculum, knowing that we fully support them.
Justine or Vanessa, any comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
I was just going to add that that's incredibly accurate, especially with Portland Public Schools. Our teachers through our teacher trainings have stated this is great information. We feel ready to teach this. However, if a parent says something, who can we connect with to support us? And administrators have also asked, school site administrators have also asked, we want to support our teachers. How are we getting support? So it's a trickle up effect. It's looking at not just central office, but also senior leadership within central offices and making sure that the training and the awareness and education and resources are available to all staff within the school district and not just exclusionary for those who are leading the instruction. I think transparency is of utmost importance. And one of my personal beliefs is communication is a foundation to positive relationships. And in essence, we're really trying to form positive relationships with our students and their families, because their families at home is where a lot of the learning happens. And so however we can look from a central office place and how we're communicating out sexuality education lessons and the use of videos or other curricula will only improve our engagement with parents and support their engagement in the students remaining in class and reduce the resistance, because the resistance is there. And what I have found is that it's usually based on lack of awareness or understanding. And so when we can take that time to really sit with a person and have a person-to-person conversation, removing titles, removing positions, and just have a genuine person-to-person conversation, then we can have growth. And so it goes back to how are we communicating from senior leadership within central office that we're going to support administrators at the schools and the teachers, and also give parents and guardians the support they need so they can be available for their students as well.
Wonderful. And Justine, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, transparency, as Vanessa was saying, is really key. I'm speaking from a very big place of privilege. I mainly work in independent schools, and the school that I am full-time at is an independent private school. And so my administrators have the ability to say, there is no such thing as opt out, because you have opted into our mission statement as a school by picking to send and pay tuition at this particular school. So if it does not align with your values, then you can pick a school that does. So with that, I make sure to try to mitigate potential pushback with a parent health resource page. There are tons of resources on there. There are parent letters that go home. They know what the curriculum looks like at back to school night. I send them the actual links to these videos because a lot of that is really just mitigating their stress around, well, I think sex ed is this, when it's totally not. So whether it's, just letting them know, whether it's through a parent handbook that I also, Rose, want to get my hands on, but just letting parents know this is what it actually looks like. It's really hard to argue against a curriculum like that.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, I'm going to try to slide in one. We're like running down on time, and I want to get to a few questions before we run out of time. But one last, really small question. I feel like this is about the time where we need Al Vernacchio's RBG sweatshirt. But let's talk about the future of sex ed. What is like a big challenge or a big priority that you want to toss out there?
I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but pleasure. If we can get parents to be on board that pleasure-based sex ed with their pre-K or even earlier is the way to do this, it would be so much easier for us middle school and high school sex educators to teach, because we're not spending time teaching them to unlearn all the things they've been wrongly socialized to subscribe to. I feel like that's the future. The optimist in me says it is. It's totally the right way to go. And I know that even when I'm speaking with graduate students around these things and framing it through pleasure, there's buy-in, because that is ultimately what we want if we're not necessarily trying to procreate. And if we can understand pleasure, we can really understand consent, we can understand intimacy, we can understand emotional intelligence, and it really becomes the actual holistic, sex-positive, comprehensive field that we all on this panel know it to be, but can now start to convince school communities to be a part of. And I think that having the Me Too movements come right before our new racial justice movement is just a testament to the fact that social justice education has always been a part of sex education when it's done right. And so I feel like we have this momentum to really bring about comprehensive sex ed in the ways that Amaze is producing and helping us with, because these movements are really pushing us to move more forward into that anti-racist, pleasure-based type of activism.
Amen. I just noticed Carrie in the chat said, I'm so happy to be surrounded by sex positive people. So yeah, I think we need to put that on a t-shirt. Rose.
Yeah, I'm fired up now. Thank you for that. I think two things. One for me is really linkage to care. So really, once we have this comprehensive sex ed in all of our schools, how do we continue to do a better job of linking our students to sexual health resources and care? We at Denver Public Schools are lucky we have a lot of school-based health centers, but even in that realm, we need to continue to do a better job of linking those school-based health centers with our students who now have the knowledge and skills and information and know what to access. So I think it's a continual thing we need to work on. And then the second is training teachers. I think asking teachers who do not, this is not their field of expertise and they don't have the content knowledge, how do we continue to train them in a way that they feel comfortable, safe, and the students really feel like they are connecting and feel safe with those teachers, I think is an ongoing kind of challenge that we have to solve.
Yeah, I definitely think part of the future includes training teachers. I'm thinking about in Oregon, we have the WISC model, the whole school, whole child, whole community model. And when I think about sexuality education and just education about life in general, I really feel about how we don't learn in a vacuum, right? And so I really feel thinking about how much time a young person spends at school in these school buildings or these virtual spaces, really focusing on how do we support teacher trainings? How do we support the funding of giving them sub-costs or extended pay, giving them the proper time in the day and prioritizing health within districts so that way health gets the time also in the school day for instruction. And so it's really for me looking at teacher trainings, as well as curricular integration is another thing that I think is the future of sexuality education, and looking at how these topics can integrate in other topics, content areas that our students are learning, such as math and science and history. With that, I also really do think that another component of our future is including pleasure, because Justine covered it really well. And there's just one thing I'd like to add about pleasure is that being comfortable with pleasure of self then can also bring about a sense of confidence and tie into the social emotional needs of a human in their confidence to also express themselves, and hopefully reduce any challenges that an individual might be experiencing around bullying of their gender expression or their identity or orientation. And so pleasure not only is pleasure is many ways to think about it, but also in the sense of self. And so those would be what I think are the future.
That's amazing. All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to, I'm addressing just a couple things in the Q&A and what I've seen in the chat. Rose, I think about 8 million approximately people want access to your parent handbook. So I'll let the wizards behind the scenes figure out if that's available and you know, whether we can do that. There's also been a question for you, Justine, about guidance about integrating Amaze videos into other subjects. And I don't know if that's beyond the scope of what we can do here. You and I could hop on a Facebook Live and talk about that.
Would love to do that. Yeah, I mean, the best comprehensive health education is one that is integrated into every subject. Sexuality is an identity we all have. And so, I mean, I'm thinking most recently of a Latin teacher in my school who came to me and said, this thing came up about virginity. I think that's more appropriate for your health class, but can you help me out? And I gave him the virginity, the video, and I gave him a little mini lesson plan to incorporate it in. And it worked out well for the 8th graders taking Latin. But there's many other ways to integrate a lot of these topics with characters that they're working with in English classes, or the study of, you know, the history of feminism in their history classes, and where a lot of these patriarchal roots are coming from. But that's just how comprehensive Amaze is, that I can just send them these links, and again, they just press play and then have students discuss. But yes, happy to connect. My handle for social media is on the bottom of my Zoom box, and there's more info in there as to how to get me over email.
Awesome. Actually, I'm already thinking my wheels are turning that I kind of want to have a separate conversation, full conversation with each of you on a Facebook Live. I just put you on the spot, sort of unofficially. We'll do it officially later. Most importantly, because people have been asking if you guys can each go around and just, people want to know how to get in touch with you. So whether it's whatever you're comfortable sharing, I don't know if you have a website or a Twitter handle or whatever, if you could go around and just tell people the best way to get in touch, that would be awesome.
Right. Yeah, my social media is I'm Justine AF, and I put also into the chat my website, justinefonte.com.
Yeah, I will. Best way to get a hold of me is via my email, and I seem incapable of talking and typing in the chat at the same time, so I will put it in there in a second.
I'm giggling because I was trying to enter my email into the text box and I just got utterly confused. So I'll figure it out in just a minute. But yes, the best way to get a hold of me is also through email. I'll put in 2 emails. There's my PPS email and then my non-PPS email that I use for professional purposes. And I am highly responsive to both. So I will put those in here in a second.
Okay, shoot. And I was going to wrap it, but I'm going to, there is one question, and I don't know if you can toss out an idea or my colleagues behind the scenes, but somebody is asking if there are resources or materials for teachers and parents, students in Native communities on and off reservations. So I don't know if you guys know of anything offhand, or if any of my colleagues do, drop it in the chat. Okay, Shazmin and Lincoln, thank you guys so much. This was incredible. I've learned so much from all 3 of you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.